Now, from the Columbia Basin, your local news source, this is iFIBER 1 News, presented in high definition. The #1 source for real-time local news, local sports headlines, and our very own Weather Center forecast covering the entire Columbia Basin. With your iFIBER 1 News team, reporting news in real time as it's happening. From the iFIBER Communications HD broadcast studio in Ephrata, Washington, this is iFIBER 1 News, and it starts now.
Welcome to iFIBER 1 News. I'm Cody Johnson with news from around the Columbia Basin for Friday, December 21st. Tonight we report on how Grant County won a case at the state Supreme Court and how Soap Lake is looking at changes in their fire protection. We look at a lesson in safety for students in Warden and talk about iFIBER 1 News Christmas holiday break, which has nothing to do with the end of the Mayan calendar, by the way. And coming up, we've got in sports the highlights from last night's Ephrata High School basketball games and news on the upcoming tournament at Big Bend Community College. We also have your weekend forecast for the Columbia Basin from the iFIBER 1 Weather Center. Our top story tonight, the Washington State Supreme Court issued a decision yesterday in what is being called a big win for law enforcement. Grant County prosecutors argued last May that police officers should have greater leeway when stopping vehicles they suspect are involved in criminal activity. The court agreed. An officer who determines a traffic stop is reasonably necessary to address a suspected traffic infraction may do so, even if there are ulterior motives for the stop, such as suspected criminal activity for which there is no probable cause. Grant County Prosecutor Angus Lee said, "This is a big win. Our law enforcement put themselves on the line every day to keep us safe. The court's ruling will go a long way to help them be able to do their jobs." The case involved a Quincy police officer responding to a report of a drunk driver. He pulled a man over without any visible signs of impaired driving. The driver was arrested for DUI after the officer found the man was apparently drunk and showing signs of intoxication. The Soap Lake is looking at changing things to improve their fire protection. Here with the story is Ryan Lancaster.
The city of Soap Lake is once again considering a contract for fire response services with Grant County Fire District 7. The issue has been discussed numerous times over the years, and Soap Lake Mayor Raymond Gravel brought it back to the table at Wednesday's City Council meeting. Gravel attended Fire District 7's Commissioner Board meeting last week.
The #1 impression that I have from that meeting is their commissioner's concern for protecting the citizens.
The district would require a minimum 3-year contract, which would cost the city about the same as they're paying now to maintain their own fire department. Soap Lake's 2013 budget locks in about $44,000 for fire services, making it the city's third highest expense behind law enforcement and finance. Under the proposed District 7 contract, the city would no longer pay for insurance, gas, equipment upgrades, retirement wages, or training costs. The contract allows the city to retain its own equipment and engine, which would be serviced and used by Fire District 7. The city has had problems attracting enough volunteers to adequately staff the volunteer department, leading to missed emergency calls.
In order to protect the property and the citizens, we need to have a better response. And that's what this is all about.
District 7 Chief Kirk Shepard told the council the contract is a win for everybody.
I mean, we're not asking to take the city's identity by providing you anything. We're just trying to provide the citizens the service that they should be getting.
Shepard said a lot of cities are choosing to merge with county fire districts to create better funded agencies with joint training and equipment.
The mentality of a small-town fire department being able to maintain itself, even financially and with volunteers, is kind of dying in Washington State.
Some audience and council members agreed the move would make sense.
I mean, how can we say no to a professional fire department that's willing to take over for the exact same amount that we're already paying out?
The city did hire a new fire chief just last week. Chief Tony Ledbetter will step into a volunteer role and be replaced by Dan Shields in the first of the year. Gravel said Shields will have a 60-day trial run before the District 7 contract is reviewed again in March.
If we still see deficiencies, that we're most likely not going to be able to overcome, and that we need to get very serious about looking at the contract.
For iFIBER 1 News, this is Ryan Lancaster reporting.
Thanks, Ryan. Safety is important to all of us. In Warden, students were given a lesson they won't soon forget. Here with the story is Ryan Lancaster.
Bloodied students and beer bottles spilled from the wreckage of a two-car collision at Warden High School on Thursday. Passengers were pried out of the mangled vehicles and loaded onto stretchers for transport to the hospital by ambulance and MedStar helicopter. One student, Garrett Marks, was zipped into a body bag for a trip to the morgue as a crowd looked on in silence. But the shocking scene of carnage was nothing more than a cautionary tale for students, showing the potential outcome of coupling the poor choices of underage drinking and getting behind the wheel. The mock car crash and funeral was put on by the joint effort of several local law enforcement and emergency service agencies, along with the Washington State Patrol. One of those involved in the program was Deputy Josh Sainsbury, a drug recognition expert with the Grant County Sheriff's Office.
Back in 2010 and 11, we had 4 collisions that killed 8 kids from the age of 15 to 21 years old. And among those 4 collisions, impaired driving was involved in 2 of them, and speed was involved in all 4. And the slowest documented speed of the 4 collisions was 96 miles an hour. So we felt, as DREs, Trooper Ryan Raymond and I, we needed to go out and reach out to the kids and explain the importance of impaired driving and what are the consequences and what's the end result amongst everybody.
According to law enforcement officials, underage drinking is more likely to kill young people than all illegal drugs combined.
And the goal was to reach out to every school in Grant County and try to change behaviors by explaining to them everything that happens in a collision.
Following the mock crash, Adam Hansen, who played the part of the drunk driver, was led away in handcuffs. He later sat with other students in the gym during an imitation funeral for Marks. Dozens of volunteers and emergency services personnel took part in the program. For iFIBER 1 News, this is Ryan Lancaster reporting.
Thanks, Ryan. We also want to send special thanks to Robert Ryder for putting that video footage together for us. Safety, it's a good segue into our next story. One person had forgotten about safety, but he had a bit of luck on his side. A truck driver checked his fuel tank with a lighter and injured himself when the fumes ignited early Friday morning. Robert Albert, a 44-year-old Union Gap man, was taken to Samaritan Hospital for treatment, according to the Moses Lake police. Albert reportedly told police his fuel gauge didn't work, and he used his lighter to see inside his fuel tank of his 1997 Kenworth semi-truck. The fumes ignited in the tank and injured Albert. The truck was parked at Americold on Road N, northeast in Moses Lake. If your nonprofit group used the Ephrata Recreation Center, then the changes in fees are going to impact you. Here with the story is Bill Stevenson.
The days of using the Ephrata Recreation Center for free are coming to an end. Recreation Director Ray Towery recommended the city raise rental rates and end a long-standing tradition of waiving fees for nonprofit organizations. The rental fees are paying for about 19% of the maintenance on the building. The rest of the $41,000 comes from property taxes. Towery recommended a small increase in ending the free use in hopes of having the center rental fees pay for at least half of the annual maintenance cost. Nonprofit groups will pay less than the new regular rental fee of $455 a day. In 2011, the city provided 40 full days of use for free and charged for 12 days of use. Groups also used the facility 31 times for half days and charged for 35, according to Towery. The city hopes to generate roughly $16,000 in 2013 instead of the $6,065 brought in 2011. For iFIBER 1 News, I'm Bill Stevenson reporting.
Thanks, Bill. The top story from this past week came from the attempt to sentence David Nichols for murder. Here with the story is Ryan Lancaster.
This court is now in session. The Honorable Evan E. Spurline presiding.
The sentencing of David Nichols for the murder of Sage Monroe has again been postponed. Following a Grant County jury conviction of first-degree murder against Nichols in September, the 31-year-old Helena, Montana man was scheduled to be sentenced today. The hearing was originally scheduled for Monday, but defense attorneys Jacqueline Walsh and Mark Larinaga were unable to drive from Seattle due to winter weather. But instead of sentencing today, Grant County Superior Court Judge Evan Spurline heard the attorney's motion for a new trial. Walsh presented evidence she says wasn't available during the trial. Potential new witnesses and witness testimony allegedly include statements showing Ian Libby, not Nichols, shot Monroe outside of his Ephrata home in December of 2009. One witness, referred to only as Witness A, reportedly told the defense team Libby tried to sell him a .45 caliber handgun, the same type of weapon the defense alleges was stolen from Monroe and used in his murder. Another witness reportedly said she overheard an alleged accomplice of Libby tell her son about the crime. Walsh also alleges misconduct on the part of several jurors in the trial, saying one woman made comments to other jurors about the case, including that she knew Sage Monroe personally. Another juror allegedly shared outside information in the case via her knowledge as a nurse. Deputy Prosecutor Tyson Hill responded to the motion by saying none of the new evidence is grounds enough for a new trial and doesn't concern whether the jury thought Nichols committed the murder. In the end, Spurline decided enough questions exist to warrant an evidentiary hearing for January 16. Jurors will be subpoenaed to discuss whether their verdict may have been swayed one way or another in light of new issues raised by the defense. Also discussed today was Spurline's order issued Monday that prohibits members of the defense or any of its agents from contacting jurors that served on the trial. The order came after two local attorneys allegedly contacted one of the jurors and tried to convince her she'd made the wrong decision in convicting Nichols. Spurline advised the no-contact order remains in place until the January 16 hearing. For iFIBER News, this is Ryan Lancaster reporting.
Law enforcement rarely gets thanks for all the work they do to keep us safe. But on one night, some are recognized for their efforts. Here with the story again is Ryan Lancaster with some video from Robert Ryder.
The Central Basin Traffic Safety Task Force recognized several law enforcement officers from Grant and Adams counties on Friday during a ceremony at the Moses Lake Civic Center. For the past 22 years, law enforcement agencies throughout the state have conducted DUI emphasis patrols during the Night of 1,000 Stars. The patrols are dedicated to officers who've died in the line of duty as well as those who continue to serve. Each star symbolizes the badge worn by an on-duty law enforcement officer.
And to give you an idea of how this impacts what we do and what we see out there, last year on a Night of 1,000 Stars, we were only able to get one DUI. Well, that tells me that it must be working. That tells me that we're doing something that's affecting some positive change out there.
After some opening words and a brief prayer on Friday, 16 officers were given awards for having the highest number of DUI arrests for their agency. It's important work. According to the Washington State Traffic Safety Commission, from 2006 to 2010, impaired driving contributed to 48% of traffic fatalities in Grant County and 38% of traffic fatalities in Adams. Award recipients were Adams County Sheriff's Deputy Craig Frank, Grant County Sheriff's Deputy Jarrett Fulbright, Grant County Sheriff's Office Motor Traffic Unit Deputy Tyson Voss, Moses Lake Police Officer Paul Womet, Quincy Police Officer Ernie Sensony, Quincy Police Officer David Anderson, Ephrata Police Officer Pat Kennedy, Othello Police Officer David Mullen, Warden Police Officer Chuck Paul, Washington State Patrol Trooper Chris Katong, Trooper Ryan Raymond, and absent but also receiving awards were Royal City Police Officer Ray Rodriguez, Trooper Dustin Steffen, and Trooper Randall Elkins. For iFIBER News, this is Ryan Lancaster reporting.
Thanks, guys. Each of the people you see here have warrants for their arrest and are wanted by various law enforcement agencies. If you see any of these people, the DOC asks that you not attempt to detain or apprehend them, but to call police. You can also call the Department of Corrections at 509-764-6180 during the day or 509-762-1160 after 5 p.m. We'll be right back after these messages with the latest from the iFIBER Weather Center.